Welcome back to Communication Breakthrough. My name is Todd Wall, and we believe that intentional communication will lead to the breakthrough that you're looking for, both in your business and in your life. If you've chosen the path of the entrepreneur, there's many ups and downs and way to go, but you have this dream of getting where you need to be or where you desire to be. But there's a path of growth in order to get there. There are intentional steps and communication that are vital to take, not only for your mindset, but also hearing from your target audience. I can't wait for you to hear from our experts today on how to build the clear path for growth for you as an entrepreneur. Stick with us. All right, welcome back, everybody. Look, if you chose the path of being an entrepreneur, it's because you wanted to grow. It's because you wanted to increase your horizons and broaden everything out in front of you. The problem is it doesn't just come naturally, and there are intentional things that we have to do in order to set that path of growth going forward. I'm about to bring on Vicky Wright Hamilton, a business coach, and especially in this mindset and not only in structure of business, she's going to be able to talk to us from several angles on that topic of how, as an entrepreneur, do I begin to grow and build that path of growth? So, Vicky, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Glad to be here, Todd.
I love it when you're here. Your insight is extremely valuable to us. So Vicky, person is chosen to be an entrepreneur. They've left their corporate life. They want to broaden out on their own, but they've got to grow as a person. They've got to grow as everything, both personally and as a business, is about growth, or they got to go backwards. They got to go back to where they were. We don't want that to happen. So help them. How do they begin this path of growth? Does it begin with mindset? Where does it all start?
Well, first of all, wanting to be an entrepreneur is not for the weak at heart, because you have to be ready to go with the ebbs and flows, as we know. So the first thing you have to do is to get your mindset right. That mindset of really getting prepared. Do I have funds? Do I have budget? Am I going to be able to take care of my bills? Do I have things put aside? Have I thought about my plan? Do I have the roadmap of what it is I really want to do? Now, 90% of entrepreneurs start because there's something they're really good at, and they just want to expand it. I'm a great marketer. I just want to market everywhere. I just want to help other businesses market their business. However, when you become an entrepreneur, there's all these different areas of business you have to think about. How am I going to do my pricing? How am I going to market to the people to even want my services? Because see, here's what happens as an expert. I'm the marketer. My language, the things I talk about are just coming to me. But to the person who's hearing it on the other end, you have to be able to speak layman's terms. But that layman terms must hit a pain point. And you have to talk directly to them about that pain point. It's back to what we talk about, that favorite frequency or radio station, WIIFM. If you're not saying what's in it for me that hits my pain point, I don't hear you. I don't have time, because it becomes very difficult for me to decipher that. So the mindset of preparation is critical before you ever begin. Understanding, who am I going after? What is it that I really want to give to them? What passion do I have, and where do my talents lie?
I love where it all begins with that radio station that, whether you realize it or not, you are always dialed into what's in it for me. Did I get that right?
That's right.
That's
right.
all of our own radio station.
That's exactly right.
So you feel like the first step is making sure the messaging is connecting with the right audience. So you're talking to them and their pain point.
That's correct. And you
Okay.
also have to understand what the market will bear. Is that a commodity? Is that something everybody's doing? Is there a little twist on what you can do and give? And I want to address the issue that when entrepreneurs go out there, a lot of times they'll say, well, I can't do this. Somebody else is doing it. I want you to remember something. We are all unique individuals with a unique perspective. And you never know when your perspective touches the pain point of someone else. If they go, wait a minute, you're really speaking to me. I understand your story. And it's about sharing our stories of connectivity. I understand your story and I can relate to you. So I therefore want to talk to you to have further conversation. When we begin, once we understand that, we can then begin to look at our ecosystem. So, what's an ecosystem? An ecosystem consists of not only the services you have, but what are the services people need before they come to you? And what are the services people need after they leave you? Because once you understand where you can play, guess what? You also can understand where you can grow because you can then grow to that full ecosystem. And there's many ways to get to that growth in terms of doing that.
That's a very interesting perspective. I actually had not thought about that in terms of this is the playground, the sandbox that I'm in. This is where they're coming from and where they need to go after. And these are the kind of the businesses that intertwine with one another. That I guess that sets up ultimately the lead flow, which you don't grow unless you've got customers. I love that. That's a fantastic perspective. So not only figuring out that customer's pain point, but then the ecosystem, how do you figure those out?
Well, when you think about any craft, anything that you do when you offer a service, and you ask yourself, why am I offering this service? What do I want them to get out of it? And we begin to address that pain point. We then say, before they come to me, are they already hurting? Is there something else that contributes to that? Now, that growth piece on the forefront allows you to understand potential partnerships for growth, understand what they're coming in with or might be missing. They could come into your pipeline, but they're missing something. So, yes, they have a pain point, but they're also missing some things that say what actually happens during that workflow. Just like when they leave you, okay, I've given your marketing blueprint, you're ready to go. What happens after that? How can I filtrate and continue to keep them around over and over again to get that back in? And this is where I was talking about even partnerships and things that you can do when you look at your workflow. So really space out what it is you're doing. Write it down. The customer goes here, they have to go here, they have to go here. These
Yeah.
are outputs they get. I can help them with these inputs. These are the other kinds of companies I can partner with. Because after all, if you don't, you end up spending more time working in your business rather than on your business.
Yeah.
And
Knowing.
working on your business is setting that strategy and plan. Working in that business is being a solopreneur and having to be a chief everything officer rather than running the organization the way you want to so that you can prosper and continue to grow and develop as a company.
And you're essentially still an employee at that point until you're working on your business.
That's correct.
I mean, because if you stop doing all the widgets and all the stuff, the business stops.
That's right.
Absolutely. That is a vital shift and necessary for growth. And after the commercial break, I'd like for you to talk about that shift and the partnerships. But I'd like to stick at the end of this segment here, this finding what that pain point is. Is there an element of listening to feedback from your existing customers? Do you want to reach out intentionally, hear from them in their words what those pain points are?
Yes, you do. And we can talk about the in depth of what that looks like. A lot of us talk a lot about discovery calls, but a discovery call is only as good as you listen.
Yeah.
Not hear, but listen.
Listen. Mm-hmm.
You have to listen. And you can test out whether you have the right pain points when you ask people questions. You should have your own internal focus group of people that you know that you can ask. does this resonate with you? What does this mean to you when you hear it? And does this touch your point? And is this something that would really help you? And if so, why? Can you tell me more about that? If not, why not? Because it's also good to understand what it's not doing as much as what it's doing. So when you begin to talk about your customers, you need to understand, do that research, and talk to people you know. You know, it's amazing. If you sat down and took a list and just wrote out 100 people you know, just 100 people you know that would be willing to support you, that you talk to, that are friends, that are colleagues, that are just family members, anybody, and go to them with an idea that says, I want to say this. What does it say to you? And shut up. Listen. What do they tell you? Where do they tell you the gaps are? Where are they telling you that, nope, you got a point there. This would really help me. I see where you're going, but I'm not sure. It'd be great if you could add this onto it. It would be great if you could feed it onto that. All of these individual things help you to determine who you're serving, why you're serving, and what you are solving for.
That is extremely powerful, Vicky. An internal focus group that you bounce these concepts and ideas off and just refine and refine and refine. One last thing before we go to the commercial break, how we interpret feedback is also vital in that. Because sometimes you get as an entrepreneur, you start the business because you feel like you've got the answers. But in order to receive feedback, you have to be open. There has to be a degree of openness. Don't you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nobody knows it all.
No.
And every little piece you can get to help you is another little piece to help you grow, develop, manifest, and move forward. So absolutely, you definitely want to be a person that is open-minded about what's happening. And the other thing is, the foundation of that, be a continuous learner. Never stop learning in your craft. Never.
I absolutely love that.
Read, take classes, learn from others, but you can never stop learning in your craft because time changes too fast. And if we don't stay on top of times, we lose it.
I love that. Vicky, stick with me. And then right after this commercial break, we're going to jump into partnerships and expanding and growing through that. So stick with me. All right, everybody. Right after this, we're going to jump into what does it mean to have a partnership to build out this ecosystem so that you grow and your business grows. Stick with us. All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm glad you stuck with us. I'm excited to get right back in this with Vicky because so often as an entrepreneur or even a leader of any sort, we get in this mode where we feel like we're all by ourselves. We can't ask anybody. We can't talk to anybody. We've just got to trudge forward all by ourselves. But the reality is we are in an ecosystem of other businesses. I love how Vicky set that up as really a key path to growing as an entrepreneur. And so let's find out more about what she meant. Vicky, an ecosystem within the business. At one point you talked about it's like the sandbox of knowing what comes before, what comes after. Mm-hmm. But you said there's power in the partnerships.
Yes.
We don't want to just give away our business and sign off and give away the profits and sharing. What does that mean? How do we grow our ecosystem?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Todd, because there's many different strategies and philosophies you can use when you start thinking about a partnership. For example, if I am a person, and I'll use my own business, one leg of my business, I do a lot of technology strategy. I work with a lot of disruptive technologies, and I'm doing a lot of things within change as big companies are implementing technology solutions. Well, when I'm in there, I'm hearing. And what am I hearing? I'm hearing about things that they're missing, things that aren't there, gaps that they have, and things that are occurring. So I have a partner that I work with that when I hear about implementations and we're talking about infrastructure, I have a partner that does infrastructure. They do the cabling, the wiring, the network, the servers, the routers, the Wi-Fi, everything. I have a partner that works for me. Now, when I have the customer, he comes in under my name as a partner and is an extension of what? My team. So it's another capability that I can offer to the client I'm already in. I'm not trying to get a new customer. I already have a customer. And we know it's easier to expand with the customer you have than having to go find somebody new. So now I see this problem. I have a potential solution because I did a partnership on that, because I listened and heard what those opportunities could be.
I really like this angle of partnership because the initial way that most people picture partnership, I mean, because they went to be an entrepreneur, to be the leader. Now I'm going to give away 50%. But this is more strategic relationships as partnership.
That's exactly
It's not that you have equity stake within the company.
right.
It's we are sharing a customer base. And
Mhm.
even really like this creative approach when you know where the lead is coming from,
Mhm.
you're able to white label. They're with me. They're part of that team. That
Mhm.
really requires a lot of communication between you and an arrangement with that partnership. What's another way we can develop in this ecosystem and partnership?
Well, and the way those things came about was simply because as I was listening and hearing problems, I started connecting dots to see how technology could help it and where I could spin off to actually offer bigger services. Another thing with partnerships is that if you take your product, who else cares about it? What other businesses care about your product? Who cares about what you offer? And how does it help their business? Now we're going to a B2B model, not a B2C necessarily, but a B2B model. So, what other business is it that I could use your services? So, let me talk about one, even with my business coaching service. So, as I work with entrepreneurs and CEOs, they're all people, they're all leaders, and they all are trying to make a difference within their company and the community. So as I talk to them, I might find, oh my gosh, they really need a tax accountant. They don't have a tax accountant. So who is in my partnership strategically in my ecosystem that I can help them have a tax accountant that's competent, qualified, that I know that can help them get where they need to be as a business. And I worked out of the arrangement with the B2B in terms of how I can send clients to them and what that would mean. Likewise, that tax accountant has a lot of clients that come against that they talk to that may really need some business coaching because of where they are tax wise and what's happening. Guess what? They can send clients to me. Again, it's not finding a client, it's leveraging an existing customer relationship.
That's
And
great.
that's what makes it strategic. So it's important that when you begin to think about it, it's not just the end consumer that's doing what I'm doing. What other businesses care about what I'm doing? And how big can I think? How global can I think? That's the second piece. The second piece is global because it's about location. So, do I have the ability to do things globally? Can I satisfy these pain points globally? And if not, how can I expand my reach? So we're not just talking about capability, we're also talking about reach. We're talking about how far can I get out there and what does that look like so that we make sure that our growth is encompassing of all.
So before we get into really the global and the reach, so would you say that this finding these other people, if the customer's journey is this long, you don't, and it's acknowledging you only want to do this much of it, and just viewing this whole journey in slices. So who can do this slice? Who can do this slice? Who can do this slice? And then building relationship between those two, because so then you're not all having to come up with fresh leads, customers, and clients. We're now building all one big relationship by slicing up the total customer journey. I really like that picture. Is that a fair assessment of how to view that?
Absolutely. And what it is a win-win strategy. Who loses? Nobody.
That's
The
right.
customer gets what they want with all the things that they're looking for. A business gets what they want in terms of making sure they connect all the dots and they don't have all the operating expense, people expense, all those things that go with it. And then you end up getting clients that are, that through that partnership that you didn't have to go seek and find. So who loses? So it's all a win-win strategy in terms of moving forward. But there's many of those that you can think about as you continue to talk about the growth of an organization and making those things happen.
And I think another implied benefit of that slicing it up in the ecosystem, it also prevents you from stepping out of your area of genius, spreading yourself too thin, which creates those negative relationships, those things that you're growing and then you have a hardship that, maybe a loss or a bad reputation because you just tried to do too much.
Mhm.
And so that really brings in, it insulates you more, so you can have less of that urge to try to do too much. Oh yeah, yeah. How often does an entrepreneur say, "Oh, I can figure that out"? Oh yeah, we do that too. But do you?
Right, exactly. And it's because we want to be all things to all people, but we can't. And
Right.
so what we have to do is to be able, that's why it's important to talk about your team and how your team can help to do this and how your team focuses on different areas. And that's the importance of having these relationships as you continue to move forward. Because there's nothing worse than saying, oh yeah, I can do that. And then you go in there and you do a poor quality. Now your brand is damaged. Forget about just the project, your brand is damaged. And we know that trying to recoup our brand is the hardest thing to do. People will fuss about what's negative. They don't always say the great positive things you do. And that's why we have to leverage other things to help us as entrepreneurs. When you get ready to do a job, ask for a testimonial. When you get ready to make things happen, get a testimonial. Have these things where other people, like I say, are carrying your glass of water for you. You don't have to carry it alone. It goes a long way when you're able to do that. So as you continue this growth, as you continue this expansion, as you continue to think about the different products and services you want to offer and how they leverage from one to another and how times change, how technology changes, how that can impact what you're doing. There's always a next. And that's why that continuous learning and staying on top of your industry, the trades, etc., are so important. You cannot stop investing in you
Yeah.
if you want to grow.
I've got one more minute. You said there's one key, the main key pivotal aspect of getting growth is working on your business instead of in your business. Just 1 minute, give me a power minute on the importance of on your business versus in your business.
When you work in your business, you're the chief everything officer and you're doing everything A through Z. You're doing the bills, the payroll, the marketing, the sales, the delivery. Everything is underneath your belly and you're trying to get it done as a solopreneur, or even if you have 2 or 3 people, you still don't have enough in terms of what it takes to get the job done. When you're working on your business, you're strategizing. You're thinking about the art of the possible. You're thinking about today, tomorrow, and 5 years from now. You're thinking about where you want to grow. You're thinking about how the industry is changing, markets are changing, how customers are changing, how new generations are changing things. What is that doing in terms of needs, wants, values, and desires? Being able to think about those things, you have time to think. And that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs don't have when they're in the business. How do I find time to think?
That vital space. Vicky, every time you were on the show, it is absolute fire. So thank you so much, because that being on, working on the business, being able to strategize versus always having your fingernails dirty and in the business, that is so critical. Thank you so much for the time, Vicky.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy.
Absolutely. All right, stick with us. Right after this, Brad Ball is going to talk to us a little more on mindset that leads to growth, and really how do we foster the creativity to see outside of the box. Stick with us. All right, everybody, welcome back. I've got a very special guest with us today. He's wrote a book, The Art of the Entrepreneur, because as we think about our business and how we want to represent ourselves in the marketplace, often we think about business and we think just ones and zeros, the color gray. We just think boring, 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 boring. I'm just clocking in and clocking out. But the reality is, if we don't bring creativity and that artistic mindset into what we do, then our consumer, our customer, they're not going to be able to tell us versus the widget next door and which is different. They're not going to know why they need to choose us to save the day. And so I can't wait to read this book, and I want to bring on my friend Brad Ball. Brad, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm excellent. How about you?
Absolutely. Very good. I want to jump right into this because I'm an artist in a business world. And so I cannot wait to read this book, The Art of the Entrepreneur. First, break down that title for me. What does that mean? What's the premise behind this?
So the premise is I'm an artist first. I don't have a business degree. I have a painting and drawing degree. And most of the time when there's a creative or artistic book, it's meant for creatives. And this is meant for the entrepreneur. And it's the art of an entrepreneur, unlocking your creative genius. And it's the fact that as people, we all are creative. And I like to ask people certain questions, especially if they have kids. Hey, are your kids creative? And they'll think about it. Then I'll ask the question, what do they do? And if you think about kids or you as a kid, you're always playing, you're making up stories, and you're doing these different scenarios in your head. Or before iPhones came about, we're driving down the road, you look at the clouds and you start to imagine the clouds as, lions or, dragons or those types of things. That's the creative imagination that we all have. But what happens is in kindergarten, we get stuck in this industrial education system that basically gives us the education that we need to go into industry. The problem is we're only spoon-fed these artistic, creative things along the way. But that's always there. And so as entrepreneurs, the more you exercise a muscle, the better you get. The problem is you ignore that muscle and never grow it.
Yeah, because like you said, that industrial mindset, we treat it more like an elective, just something that we'll go to a painting with a twist for a date night, something like that. So in the world of the entrepreneur, how do you bring out that creativity? How does this play into things?
So the first step that I would challenge people to do is start to do creative things, whether that's music or drawing. And the more you do it, the better you get. And you'll actually see this. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that when they get older, they start to do art. Why? Because they have time and energy to do so.
Well, I got to stop you there because, I can see the entrepreneur, the leader of the company going, why? I've got so many things to do. I've got so many things on my plate. Why do I want to go and do that? So lead me there first.
Okay.
Why do I want to be creative?
So as an entrepreneur, as a leader, what's the number one thing you typically have to do? You have to cast vision. You have to see ahead of you or know what's coming. And that's the creative mind. And I was talking to a CPA recently, and he was like, I'm not creative at all. I can't draw a stick figure. And I challenged him because he told me something very specific. He said he could look at somebody's numbers and then tell them what they needed to do to enhance their business. Now, another CPA in his business could not do that. They had not trained that ability to see those things. So when people think of art and creativity, they think, oh, I'm going to draw. No, it's that mind to be able to find different angles or different perspectives of how to see things that other people cannot. And so that's a part of the journey that I'm looking at. A lot of them are artistic principles, but if you think of the Matrix, if you've seen the movie The Matrix, and Neo looks at the spoon and, the spoon bends. Well, if you actually do that and you look past the spoon to something beyond, that spoon kind of does start to distort. And that's kind of the perspective. As entrepreneurs, we get so focused on the one thing right in front of us, we miss the forest behind it.
I love that. So it develops your ability to, like you said, see the numbers and see the story behind the numbers. As entrepreneurs, we started with a dream, but then we run into all of these obstacles. So the art of being creative, of being an artist within this entrepreneur environment, I guess also it enhances our ability to see things differently and then to be able to overcome these obstacles in a creative way.
Of course, as an artist, I'll go through seasons because I get busy with work, seasons where I'm painting a lot or drawing. And then there's the times where I'm not doing much. But the times that I'm painting or drawing more, I will go to bed with more ideas. I'll wake up with ideas of how to approach the business in certain ways or see things in a different perspective that I don't get when I'm not doing it. And so it's just like a muscle. If I wouldn't walk into a gym and just right away expect to bench press 225 pounds, I'm going to have to start small and build up to that weight. And eventually I'll get there. It's the same thing with creativity and art. Everybody has it. You just got to recognize it and work on that muscle and continue to grow it. And how you apply that to your business is slowing down just enough to let the creative happen. And a lot of times we fill our day with tasks, we fill our day with agenda, and we don't leave in time for that creative pause, for that creative mindset to really take over.
That is interesting. So you got to work it out just like at the gym and be intentional in building time into it. But now you mentioned principles. These principles of art, is that what will lead you through the process so that you don't go, I've got art time, like recess time when we were kids, but I've got art time, but what do I do with that? Is that where the principles come into play?
It's just taking time to be creative.
Okay.
I mean, I would say less of principles and more of just doing, because it's in us already. We just don't take the time to really let our imaginations go. And I remember stories of Apple or, movie studios having space for their creatives to get out into nature and to spend time in that creative mind. Because if you're just stuck in task and if you're stuck in agendas all day, you're not giving your brain the time to relax and create.
Interesting. So really, it's just that permission of opening a door, because our tasks keep us in this closed mindset. The creative process helps us see the world around us in a bigger way. And so what you're saying is it also helps the brain to operate in a different way, different capacity.
Of course, 100%. I mean, why do people do breath work and things like that? It's because it causes you to slow down and breathe and really engage into who you are and just relax. And as your bodies, you can develop a lot of tension, especially as entrepreneurs. And if you don't release that, it just compounds upon itself. And my daughter has been having jaw problems. And so we took her to a doctor and, is it TMJ? And they're talking, well, they may have to have surgery. Well, they said, we'll send her to a therapist or basically go to therapy. And the first therapy session, her jaw went from a 30 to a 37. And what the therapist said is if she's clenching like this all the time, and she has for years, her body's just locked up and she needs to work that out and relax. And so I
think every entrepreneur would identify with that.
Right. And so when you juxtapose that with just the piece of who you are and getting into the creative sides of things, I believe that entrepreneurs will have a lot more fulfillment because you're really being more well-rounded, because we're all created as creative people. And we just get stuck in the society of industrialism that kind of hinders, I think, our growth potential.
It definitely hindered me, because everything was, you don't even have to be a conspiracy theorist to recognize how we're trained through the schooling process, the structure to think in a certain way, to operate in a certain way, don't speak up, don't act up, stay in line. And the creative process as an entrepreneur, you can't just stay in line. Mm-hmm. You've got to draw outside of the lines. You've got to find that creativity to see the problems differently, or you're going to be just like everybody else. Mm-hmm. So after the break, I want us to talk more about these principles. But how else do you, so you carve off time, but how else do you bring that creativity back into your life?
For me personally,
Yeah.
or just in general? I mean, it's a part of me. I don't necessarily have to bring it back into my life. I just have
someone who it's not natural to them, but they haven't come to grips with they are an artist. They haven't recognized that. How do they step into this foreign land?
It's by actually just getting out and doing it, because I'm not an artist. That's what they're saying, or I can't draw.
Mhm.
But creativity is way more than that. And part of the journey of the book is to help people recognize that there's other aspects to creativity that they fit in. And so most entrepreneurs that may be very analytical, they may be data driven or look at numbers. But I know people, they can look at 3 numbers in their books and they're going to know exactly how their business is. And then they can identify those things. That's the creative mind. That's not analytical mind. You're looking at a problem and how you solve it. And so the more you can tap into that creativity, the more you can do things that allow you to slow down and think and process, allows you to do that. And visionaries are usually really good at it. But what if you did more creative things throughout the day? And one thing that I would find as creative is going for a walk and to think and process, not with your phones, not with those things, but really look at what's around you. What sounds do you hear? What cars are going by? These little things that you don't think about because you're go, go, go. Once you start to receive those things in, the more awareness of the surroundings you'll have, and that will impact your business because you'll be more aware of those details within the business.
And it just opens your mind up to a whole new world. Hey, Brad, stick with us. I'd like for you to get into these principles of art and see how we can apply those to the day-to-day of the entrepreneur. All right, everybody, stick with us, because now that our minds are open and we're open to this creative process, let's add a little bit more structure to it. Stick with us. Let's look at the principles behind it. All right, thank you for sticking with us. And hey, if you're not one of the creatives and this feels like a foreign territory, we're going to give you some solid ground to stand on in this next segment. Because it's yes, we want our minds to open and our minds to wander. But if you're a pragmatist like I am many times, I need some structure to operate within that. So let me bring Brad back on. Brad, so it's not just willy-nilly sit down with a piece of paper. There's more to the principles of being an artist that we can apply to the business world. So let's walk through. Give us three in this segment. Let's start with the first one. What would that first key principle be?
I think the first principle is just mindset.
Okay.
So having a creative mindset, because typically you think of a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Fixed, nothing changes. It is what it is. That's how it is. Growth, that business, it's constantly going to grow. You're going to get better. You may fail at times, but it's going to continue to progress. A creative mindset, I would takes growth to another level, because you're growing, but you're also looking at it from various perspectives and new angles, so that growth can be more exponential than just what it is right now.
Is this kind of the same element of, like, if I had a blank piece of paper in front of me so that I can see that many different directions? It doesn't have to be finite realities?
Right. I mean, because if you have a diagram of where you want to go, what if somebody sees that diagram and has a totally different perspective than you do? Because they're looking at it from a different angle. And as entrepreneurs, that creative mindset has the ability to look at things from those different perspectives, which is technically the next point of perspective. The idea that as business owners, we can find the details and the things that are happening within the business by shifting our perspective or shifting our angle from a different viewpoint. Also asking people that we know that may see it differently than we do.
You know, Brad, I come from 30 years in broadcasting and sports broadcasting specifically. And you know, in every field that is there, and this is the lesson in perspective that I was taught early in broadcasting. In this field of whatever game, there are cameras all the way around that field for a very specific reason, because whatever is going on here, there's something else going on here.
Yeah.
And those are two different stories. And so how we approach that perspective, it's important to tell all sides of those stories. So you're saying in the creativity, is it broadening your ability to see multiple perspectives?
I think you have to, because when you think of your camera analogy, that these cameras can have these really wide angles. And that if we pause that angle for a minute, that you could then go and look at these people over here, and this is happening over here. There's all these things that could be happening, but what's the focus? And as business, that happens all the time. You got all these things happening, but what do you focus on? Where are you going? And so that's where, when the camera can then narrow in into that specific thing, you as a business owner, if you're having problems or issues, being able to see the whole playing field, but then hone in on to what needs to be fixed or what needs to be done, is extremely vital. And I think it's awesome when you watch like an NFL game and, you know, they run the football and you're like, man, if they would have just ran this way, the hole's wide open. Why didn't they go that way? Well, they didn't see the hole because their perspective was blocked. And so from above, we can see the lane, but it took somebody from the outside to be able to see that. And so sometimes you need that accountability, or you need that person that sees it differently to open up your eyes to something new.
So in broadening, how do we practically do that? In broadening our perspective, you mentioned bringing somebody else's perspective in, but how do we practically not only have that growth mindset, which says this situation can be anything, but then change our perspective practically from an artistic and entrepreneur perspective? How do I do that?
I think as entrepreneurs, a lot of times we silo ourselves. And as creatives and as entrepreneurs, we cannot do that. We need people around us, whether that's a coach, which I know you're very big on that, whether that's a mentor. I love the idea of mentorship and accountability. And so I think that's important in terms of developing who you are as an entrepreneur. And in the process, as a creative person, inherently, that the more you can understand these things and these principles, the more you can do creative things, the more you're going to see how creative you actually are. And those are the important principles, I believe, in really taking the business to the next level. And then on the flip side, the last thing is connecting the dots, because businesses have all these things going on. As an entrepreneur, you got to be able to connect the dots. And part of this creative exercise that I like to challenge people is, if I had you connect, and I'll ask you this question, if I put 3 dots right here and I asked you, what shape would you create? What would that be?
Obviously, that's a triangle.
It's a triangle. What if I said you were wrong?
I would call you a jerk. No, go ahead.
Well, if I didn't give you any rules or parameters, what else could you connect those dots? You can make a circle. You can make a square. You could do anything if you knew that that's available. But we've been taught since we're young, if there's dots, the quickest way is a straight line, and you connect the dots and make a triangle. With business owners, we're typically breaking the rules as it relates to where we're going and what we're doing. That's the creative mindset. Those are the creative things that entrepreneurs need to be doing and understanding, is that the more you can change the rules, and meaning, hey, I'm supposed to do it this way. Well, if I do it this way instead, it's going to create X to the business. That's flexing that creative muscle. And another aspect to this creative thing is,
that really is where a lot of the breakthrough is, because as entrepreneurs, we hit obstacle after obstacle, whether it's a bad team member, a bad experience with the wrong Facebook group that then sends us in a spiral. How are we then going to create, or even our market dries up? Like like you mentioned before, if we were in the event space and then all of a sudden the event space dries up, how am I going to pivot and create a new environment? And so it's bringing new perspectives into my life, other people who can see that differently, opening myself up so that I can see that differently. So it has to be this way. There's only one way things can be. And then looking at things from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've heard you mention Legos before as a principle. So tell me more about that.
So this came evident, the Lego movie, if you haven't seen the Lego movie, it's a great movie. And the premise is that you've got all these Legos and they're just going about their life, but they have this thing called Craggle and it's evil. They can't have it. And long story short is Craggle is crazy glue. And in the real world is a dad who wants to do crazy glue all over those Legos. But a boy wants to just have fun and create and play and create all these elaborate stories. And that's what the movie's about, is these stories this kid's creating. But his dad wants to crazy glue everything. And so when I apply that into my own life and even with my son's life, you spend $100 on a Lego set and it gets built and it lasts for about a week. And I think most parents would understand this, that a week. Why? Because at some point they're going to break it and build something brand new. And that's the creative mindset that we all have, that creative process that we go through, because sometimes we get bored and you're like, break it, let's put something new together. We all have that need to create and do things differently and build. That's just, if you look at your kids, that's what they do. But we're told, hey, you got to sit in a chair every day, do your work, and that's it. But what if we allowed our team members to break the Legos from time to time and build something brand new? And I think as entrepreneurs, we don't ever give people the space. And one thing that we adopt is kind of the idea of fail forward. Mm-hmm. We want to encourage failure. We want to encourage trying things new, because that should only make us better. And that's that creative process. Okay, do this, create this, develop this. Does it work? Assess, and then redo or continue on.
I started off with, this is a foreign topic, this idea of being creative. But the reality is, if you're the entrepreneur who's started the business, or you're just a manager in a new department taking over for somebody, you did that same thing on the front end. You wanted to break the rules. You said, oh, no, this has got to be done differently. And so these principles really give us some guidelines on it. When it's okay to think bigger. It's okay to look at a different angle. It's okay to not just go in a straight line, but to go, what's another way I can get from point A to point B to really, and still get to the same objective. But I really love this last one with the Legos, especially within a team environment of, it's okay to fail. It's okay to break it and start over. As long as you don't go to the degree, you and I have another friend that at a certain point in the business, she always just breaks it down. Mm-hmm. She always just tears down all the Legos. So there are extremes we want to avoid, but within the smaller context, the smaller galaxy of our business, the ability to just float creatively can open up our perspective and help us get past more things.
100%. I mean, when you look at the biggest entrepreneurs, most of them have some type of learning disability, whether it's dyslexia or ADHD. Mm-hmm. Why do a lot of them have dyslexia? Because they think differently. Yeah. They think in 3 dimensions, and they're not bound by the rules that were created for them. And plus, some would just work their tails off too. But if you look at the Elon Musks or the Steve Jobs, those guys were very creative in their own right. And they were great communicators. And I think communication is a creative art form in and of itself that nobody ever talks about. And so the more you can work on that, basically creating that as an art of itself, the better you're going to be as a business.
I absolutely love it. I love this perspective. I'm going to bring you on the show again to teach us more about creativity, but the art of entrepreneurs. Tell me again, and it comes out in December, right?
The Art of an Entrepreneur, and it should be released this summer around July.
This summer around. That's better than I thought. That's even better. Fantastic. Brad, thank you for the time. I can't wait to have you back on the show again.
It's my pleasure. Thanks.
All right, everybody. You've got freedom to open up your perspective, open up your creativity to make your life and your business what you can possibly dream it can be. That's where breakthrough comes from. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.